about some maybe post 6-1 free agents that could join, trade rumors. One thing that I saw that Dio Orlando Ledbetter put out there on a tweet today, and you probably don't even want me to say this, but he floated the idea of Kirk Cousins retiring, and if he did, the Falcons would be entitled to recoup some portion of that signing bonus. Now, there has been no indication to my knowledge that Kirk's even remotely considering retiring. He wants to play in 2025, and also he's a businessman. So like Derek Carr was in pain, like and wanted to go and left all this money on the table or whatever with the Saints, and but I don't think Kirk's giving anything back from that huge signing bonus that he got from us.
No, and that's honestly, I mean, that's on par with anything that D Orlando fucking tweets out and says. That might be different podcasts to go do. Kirk is not going to retire. He has no. I mean, he'll be what? Or he just turned 36, or he turns 36 coming up soon. He's not going anywhere. Yeah, he loves that money. More importantly, his family loves that money, and so he's not going to dig into his own pocket. He's not hurting for money. I think he's probably made more money in his career than anybody not named Patrick Mahomes at this point. And hell, most of what he's made has been guaranteed too, because I mean, he had, he was tagged after tagged after, like he's made a ton of money, but again, he's already told us he wants to play. So, retirement, it's just even nonsensical to bring up. You're doing nothing but trying to engagement farm at that point when you tweet out some shit like that. He knows the deal. Like and he was the one that was dumb enough to put in a no trade clause, right? So he makes it a little bit harder to trade him. If you really want to go play, there's probably going to be a team that will test your no trade. But again, we've talked numerous times. This thing's going to go into the season. He's going to be an Atlanta Falcon unless a team meets the criteria that you can go back into episode 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've talked about it numerous times what those are. Yeah, he's not going to retire. He's going to be here. Will he show up for mini camp this week? Maybe, maybe not. If he doesn't, again, he's a backup quarterback. Don't give a damn. They'll have plenty of quarterbacks there. They'll be play, and the spotlight is going to be on Michael Penix, right? Like, and this is what I really do hate about having to religiously keep talking about Kirk Cousins. It's Michael Penix's time, man. And that kid's really fucking good. He's really fucking exciting. And every time somebody writes something or every time somebody talks about Kirk Cousins, they're taking away from Michael Penix.
Mm-hmm.
That earned this time. That kid is ready to go, and that kid's really good. And so for me, I wish people like D Orlando, who cover this team every fucking day, would start to realize that Michael Penix is good and he can ball. And let's start getting some eyes and some attention on him to get him in that MVP conversation here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very well said too. And to be honest with you, Jeff, I'm not entirely convinced that if there was a starting job that opened up and it wasn't desirable, I don't think that he'll go and become like the Cleveland Browns quarterback. Like, I don't think he's waiving his no trade clause for that. If it's something like San Francisco where he's like, hey, like, I can go hook back up with Kyle, this team's good, and maybe this leads to another contract, fine. But getting into a shitty situation, because there's also that risk, Jeff, that if he goes to, I don't know, let's say Miami dissolves, right? And they trade away Tyreek Hill, and that offensive line is obviously like really bad too. Like, if he goes down to Miami, reunites with Mike McDaniel, and things go sideways, then all of a sudden he gets cut the following year and nobody wants to sign him. Like, he needs to be somewhere where he could pop. And I think Atlanta is a good spot for just that. Like, he could just kind of be on the sidelines. If Penix gets injured, he can come in. I hope that doesn't happen, but like that, he has that risk, but also he's not putting out bad tape out there by staying in Atlanta. Like, he could potentially next offseason when we cut him, get another contract. So in his best interest, I don't think he's going to just waive the no trade clause for anybody.
No, I don't think so either. I think it has to make sense professionally. I also think it has to make sense personally. I've said many times I don't think he wants to go play in a cold weather city at the end of his career. So I think if a team like either LA franchises or San Francisco or Arizona or Miami or Tennessee or teams that are in relatively warmer climates than the Steelers, than the Browns, than the Jets, then the Vikings, right? All of those teams play. His name has been linked to a lot of those teams. I don't think he wants to go play in cold weather at the end of his career. And so, I think there's a select list of teams that he would be willing to sign that no trade for. And, not to my knowledge, none of them have reached out for his services yet. Again, I've said numerous times, I think this goes into the season. And to your point, he's going to be very picky about where he goes. And so he can say all the nonsense he wants about wanting to be a starting quarterback. I don't think he wants to be one that bad just yet.
Yeah, for sure. I totally see that side of it too. And frankly, for us, like I I know he's very expensive, but I view it as a sunk cost. I mean, at this point, if we don't get the comp that we want and he doesn't sign that no trade clause, better for us because we
Yep.
need a backup. I don't want Easton Stick coming in and playing any games, so I'm completely fine. Like if the worst case scenario comes and he opens up as the QB2 week 1, I'm fine with that, and we just wait. A player could go down week 1 through 8, or whenever the trade deadline is. It might be week 10 now, and if that coach is on the hot seat, if they need to make some noise, here's one. Here's a great one, Jeff. JJ McCarthy goes down again. KOC and that GM are going to be on the hot seat if they can't, deliver a winning season. And also with that GM missing almost every single draft pick. Because at that point, if JJ McCarthy tears his ACL and he's out for the season again, that Kwesi has basically missed on every single draft pick not named Jordan Addison at that point. I think they could be a team that gets desperate and trades for Kirk under that scenario.
Yeah, and if that's the case, Falcons are going to get everything they asked for,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So again, it comes back to everything we've talked about. The Falcons have been very specific and they've been very patient. This was a hare versus the tortoise, right? Like everybody wanted them to jump out quick, and this is a long game for them. So, the more desperate a team is, the more they're willing to give up, especially a place like Minnesota, where you're playing musical quarterbacks with a really good offensive set, and they
Don't
come
you,
knocking.
Jeff? Don't you love it when people say like, "Oh, Falcons, yeah, cut Kirk outright. Just put the dead cap on your thing so you can sign with another team. Get nothing out of it." Oh yeah, Kyle Pitts, Falcons. You take the salary and you'll get a seventh round pick. I'm like, what are these like? How do these scenarios make sense? Like, it's almost like the media just wants us to be bad, and they just want to give all of these weird trade options. What's the incentive in that? That kind of shit really ticks me off as a fan.
Madden has made people stupid. Right, like people turn all the parameters off on Madden and make these stupid trades and go, "See, it can work," and it doesn't. And NFL teams who do dumb shit like that end up recycling or end up having to change GMs, presidents, coaches, and quite frankly, this franchise needs to stop doing that. Right,
Yeah.
like this franchise, this is missed the playoffs for 7 straight years. Do some dumb shit like that, and you'll go another 7. You'll start ending up in the Jets range, right, or the old Browns range where they went a decade without making the playoffs, and that's not where you want to be, because I promise you, Mercedes-Benz will be empty if they go another 2 years without making the playoffs.
It's just brutal, Jeff, that like since that stadium has opened, we haven't really had a big game in there. Maybe the inaugural season when we first opened up, maybe that was potentially there was a couple big games in there, but like I mean the college teams, like the SEC schools have had bigger games in there than we have, which is kind of sad, but hopefully that changes because I think this season we have a clear path. The schedule is there. I hope it all works out. But one thing I wanted to discuss, and we've talked about this potential a trade candidate at length, Jalen Ramsey, Jeff. Are there any updates on him that you're hearing about, or is the same, or is it status quo with him?
Nothing's changed. Yeah, nothing's changed. I know he's not happy there, and I know he took to social media this week, hoping to kind of like push this thing along. I think the longer this goes, the more and more it's less likely that the Falcons come out on top with him.
Yeah, and the part that really bugs me about that, and this is kind of circling back on our last segment when we talked about the Legacy Locker Room podcast, but Roddy White, on a positive note, talked about how his biggest moment, like his favorite moment in the NFL, was that first playoff game in 2008 in Arizona. He talked about how hyped he was and how the crowd was different, how, there weren't calls that would normally get called during the regular season, maybe a lot more physical football being played there. That's the type of thing that I feel like could stunt Drake London, or it could shock Bijan Robinson once they get into a playoff atmosphere, that someone like Ramsey or Jesse Bates, they can communicate. Jake Matthews, like, we need to have all of these guys like that have kind of been there, done that, as many players as we can get to help coach our young guys up, because our team is relatively young. Like, there's going to be a lot of people on that team that it's going to be their first playoff game, and they could just get stunned at how fast, especially if you play an experienced team, right? Like, if they go up against another young team, then that's fine. But, you draw the Lions, who have been in the playoffs. I know it sounds weird, for the past like 3 or 4 years. They could get shocked at how physical that game
Yeah.
is. So we need, like, I think it's very important, whatever it is, we bring a lot of guys like that, especially one that's went all the way. Bates has been to Super Bowl, lost to Ramsey. Ramsey won a Super Bowl. Like, we want to have a lot of those guys in the room.
Yeah, I think I think there's something to be said for that for sure.
Yep. And then last thing, Jeff, we kind of we talked about this off camera, but I just wanted to bring it up with the listeners as well. David Andrews, he announced his retirement last week, and then shortly right after that, Falcons tendered Neuzil. You told me we were talking about this a little offline, but I want you to also reiterate or repeat yourself with the listeners. It said, like, the signing of Neuzil came right after the retirement. Does that imply that Falcons are really monitoring the Andrews situation very closely?
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were in contact with his reps within like an hour and a half of him getting cut and released by the Patriots. Like, that was a guy that they would love to have brought home. Obviously from Atlanta, is a distant relative of Dan Reeves. So a lot of Atlanta ties. A guy obviously who's was really good at football, right? I mean, you don't go from being a walk on at Georgia to being on scholarship to not getting drafted to being the starter for a guy by the name of Tom Brady, right? Like, that just doesn't happen unless you play really good football. And so, I understand why they wanted him. He would have been an upgrade, and so it might upset some people, but Neuzil was not their priority. Andrews thought he was going to play, right? But I'm told that rehab was not going well, and he may have to have another surgery. And so at that point, it was just he and his family decided it was just best for him to hang it up. And so at that point, Falcons go with their, I can't say ace in the hole because it's not an ace, but they go with the guy who didn't really have any other options because he was a restricted free agent. He wasn't unrestricted. So the Falcons got first crack at him, so I mean, literally within hours of Andrews announcing his retirement, they signed Neuzil, and he had been participating anyway. I think they would have brought him back in some regard. He probably got more money right now than he would have otherwise. But you bring in a guy who made 7 starts for you last year. I'm not a big fan. And the reason I've said this numerous times, when you start 7 games, you shouldn't lead the NFL in penalties for your position. And yet Neuzil started 7 games and led all centers and accepted penalties last year. That's a problem for me. And this is a downgraded position that's really really important to not downgrade at, and that's your center position. There's a reason that only 7 to 8 of those guys get drafted every year, and it's because when you find a good one, he stays in the league for 10 to 12 years.
Hmm.
And most teams don't do what the fucking Falcons did, and they don't let their center walk. And so I'm really that's my probably one of my biggest concerns. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of Neuzil, not saying he can't improve, because I hope he has. Good Lord, I hope he has. But I just think you are there's potential issues when you have your for all intents and purposes a rookie quarterback, taking snaps from a center who is not the guy that he was taking snaps from last year in the last 3 games of the year.
It sounds like this moment that we couldn't re-sign Dahlman, and I'm not sure what all went into that, like whether we offered the same amount of money that Chicago did, but like we were in on Jared Wilson in the draft. We tried to trade up for him. We got sniped by the Patriots. We obviously kept tabs on David Andrews too. So it's safe to say that the Falcons aren't even comfortable with Neuzil themselves, that they waited for the last moment, the second David Andrews. I mean, maybe it's also to the point that you said, Jeff, that he's a restricted free agent. So they were just kind of taking their time willy nilly. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean but ultimately the only way that position is going to get upgraded at this point is if somebody weird gets cut at the end of the summer before week one, and there's a surprise they can go out there and grab. Other than that, this is pretty much what the roster is going to look like.
Yeah, at least I mean we had heads up about it a little bit, unlike Detroit, where their center just up and retired, all pro guy. That hurts even more because now they're kind of scrambling, like looking for a plan at center.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine that. You go through the draft, you think you have everybody, you go through the free agent period, and then all of a sudden your guy's like, "Nah, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean
I'm
that's
out."
like Chris Lindstrom telling us now, like, hey guys, by the way, all pro guy, just saying he can't. That then our line's really gonna take a step back, but.
100%.
Well, I think we can cut it here, Jeff. That's our 12th episode of Flight Path. Seriously, we want to thank all of our listeners. We only go as far as you guys take us. It's awesome the amount of support you guys are showing. We're close to, I think, less than 90 new YouTube subscribers away from our first giveaway. So we're getting close to that 500 subscriber count, which is really awesome given the everything we've been doing. But really appreciate you guys. We'll be back at a similar time next week and really appreciate all your guys' support.